Hi everyone. We'll begin, I guess. All right. Thank you all for joining. I am Manav, and I will be hosting the talk today. And today's talk is a part of the Water Classrooms project that is being um, organized by the Living Waters Museum in collaboration with TESF. The Living Waters Museum, it started at the Center for Heritage Management at Ahmedabad University. It was founded by Dr. Sara Ahmed, and we're currently based at the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Pune, IISER, in the Center for Water Research. We are also a founder member of the Global Network of Water Museums, which has been endorsed by the UNESCO's International Hydrology Program. LWM is a virtual museum which tries to engage the youth in visualizing water heritage and reimagining sustainable and inclusive and equitable water futures. We tap into the power of storytelling and technology through which we uh, aim to spread and celebrate our water wisdom and inspire youth to look at water from an interdisciplinary lens, and also co-build a digital repository in the process, which can be used as a source of learning. In March 2022, we had launched the Pune exhibition called the Pune Se Pani, and from for in which a lot of people from IISER had participated, including students, faculty, and a lot of other members. And in the previous year, we had started a collaboration with the Transforming Education for Sustainable Futures, TESF, which is a research network which is under the UK GCRF, Global Challenges Research Fund, and is anchored at the University of Bristol. It has hubs in India, Rwanda, South Africa, Somalia, and the Somaliland. And in collaboration with the India hub of TESF, um, at the Indian Institute of Human Settlements, and Living Waters Museum at the Center for Water Research here at IISER Pune, and also other collaborators like the Science Activity Center at IISER Pune and Center of Environment Education at Pune. We are developing water classrooms for middle students. The aim of this project is to empower students to gain different perspectives from which on approaching water, from which they can look at the problem of sustainable futures from a water lens. And the classroom is a set of visually rich pedagogical tools, um, and is developed by a diverse team of content creators, water professionals, academics, filmmakers, artists, educators, and also students of the college as well as middle school themselves. And everyone is learning each other from a process. And to enable an exchange of ideas and knowledge related to education for sustainable development, we are organizing the series called Unraveling Sustainability and Education. And as a part of the series, today we have Dr. Deborah Dutta and Samira Mukherjee, who will give us a glimpse into how simple school activities can be powerful tools to empower students towards sustainable futures. Before I hand it over to them, I'll quickly introduce them. Deborah is a researcher with a PhD in science education. She's interested in designing immersive learning environments, understanding socio-technical systems, and developing theories of motivation underlying collective action. Her work has been honored by several national and international awards, including the World Technology Award in Environment category 2005 and Sahyadri Hirakani Award in 2011. Samira Mukherjee is an educator with more than 2 decades of experience as a primary and middle school teacher. She's a passionate advocate of outdoor teaching and is an avid gardener. Before I hand it over, we'll take up questions at the end of the session. But in the meanwhile, you can put questions in the chat and we'll start from there. I'll hand it over to Deborah and Samira.
Thank you so much, Manav. Thanks for the introduction. Although there's a correction, I have published widely, but none of the awards yet. But in general, I'm very excited to collaborate with different organizations, and I'm very passionate about working with teachers and schools. I'll just share my screen quickly. Is this visible?
Yes, it is.
Great. Okay. So yeah, the discussion for today is that of food gardens in schools, and this is in the format of we basically, sorry, yeah, sorry, yeah. So the structure of today's session is where I just wanted to set some context for this project of how we began with starting a food garden in a CBSE school. What was the premise for this project, the approach that we took, some details about the school site, and the main focus is on having interactions with the teacher Samira, who was also a co-facilitator with this on this project. So one of the driving questions for me as a researcher is about how environmental education can equip students to effectively respond to environmental challenges. And this is really what researchers term as a wicked problem, because you don't have explicit solutions or ready-made solutions for these kind of open issues, and there are various conflicting ideas or overlaps between thinking about justice, thinking about ecology, thinking about fragility of ecosystems, and so on. So when we think about building what one can call as action competency in students, which is basically developing the skills, the motivation, and an emotional inclination to achieve specific environmental outcomes, this requires building a model of how such motivations can emerge. Basically, how can teaching actually nurture these kind of perspectives, and then being able to facilitate effective interventions based on this model. So I won't get into the first part of this question, which was also part of my research, but based on the idea of developing a motivation model, I had thought of designing a food garden project. And the premise is that we know that pro-environmental actions is a core aim of environmental education, but a bulk of the educational content is focused on conveying information about environmental issues. And this is based on the assumption that information will usually result in desired action. And this is based on a classical information processing model of cognition, where the idea is that knowledge will follow information and action follows knowledge. But we know that this is not true. I mean, from our own experiences and what we see around, that, if it was only a question of awareness, then many things would have been set right. But there are so many structural issues, motivational issues, and so on. So the limitations of the current, pedagogical approach is that standard modes of acquiring knowledge do not directly lead to action. And there is an assumption that formal environmental knowledge that is usually equated to knowledge for pro-environmental action. And this tends to marginalize or neglect forms of knowing that might be implicit, experiential, or context-based. And the interplay between affect, motivation, social structures, and knowledge is also missing. So to kind of understand what kind of pedagogy needs to be imagined, or how do we think about alternatives, I wanted to design a project that can explore what kind of environmental sensitivity can emerge if appropriate learning environment is constructed. And this took the form of a terrace garden. So, and this is again a question that is not new. Several educators have raised it. In fact, Stevenson, writes that while an environmental education curriculum should be interdisciplinary and focus on real practical problems, school curricula are discipline-based and emphasize on abstract theoretical problems, whereas a curriculum in environmental education is emergent and problematic in that the content arises as students are involved in specific environmental problems. Most school curricula are predefined since they are designed to serve predetermined behaviorally specific ends. That is, ends whose attainment can be readily assessed. So that's another big issue that we may not be able to touch in as much detail, that of assessment and evaluation. But the main question being that, okay, what can be the kind of interventions or ideas that can be implemented within the normal school setup. So with this idea, I had broached the principal of a CBSE school in Mulund in Mumbai, where it was the way this project was designed is that I worked with 48 graders for 10 months over, and we had like 26 sessions, and they usually worked in groups of 2 and 3. This was an ungraded project, and it was co-conducted with 2 expert facilitators from outside, as well as 2 teachers and the school staff in the school gardeners who were part of the staff. And for the project, I had administered questionnaires to all students before and after the intervention to understand if they had prior experience of gardening activities and what changes were perceived after their participation. In terms of data, we had collected videos, questionnaires, we had in-depth interviews, and the students would maintain like their diaries, and we had like a lot of photos to share. So I'll just quickly be running you through some of the glimpses of the activity as it progressed. So this was on the rooftop of the school, which was absolutely bare when we began. So we began by collecting like biomass from in and around the school compound. And you can see that this was part of the terrace, and that's an extended part. They had a small boundary or like a balcony, a parapet. And this is like this, you can see that when it began, we began with, the idea was that we wanted to use as less material as possible, reuse to whatever extent. So the planters were mostly discarded cardboard boxes or cloth bags, and we would use all kinds of materials to hold them together. And gradually, as the number of plants grew, the students could harvest some of the greens, which was like the first harvest was a cause of much celebration. And later on, as the plants grew, they discussed ideas as to how they can support the creepers and the climbers. So there were a lot of discussions, and they would work together to create these different designs that could support the plants. And that itself was again an activity that was, gave them a lot of joy and ownership with respect to, what was happening on the farm, because they really felt responsible for what was growing. And this is like after one of these sessions when gradually they were getting, warmed up to the idea of getting their hands dirty, which was not something that they began with. And after a year or so, slowly, like the rooftop, one could see that it was changing with more greenery and more plants. And you can even see that the school is in the proximity of a landfill. And that itself provided a very stark contrast for the possibilities of organic waste in terms of whether it can end up in a landfill or it can be used as compost and be used to actually grow a food garden. And in different seasons, as a lot of compost was used, um, uh, plants that we did not intend would also come up, and gradually it really took the form of a food forest. And um, um, even like fruiting trees and all could be seen. So and you can see like it there was like this dense foliage of different kinds of creepers and climbers, and it really became a very rich exploratory space for students as well as teachers. So these are, again, mostly during the monsoon, there would be a profusion of all kinds of leafy greens and even like cassava and lemongrass and fast growing plants. And a lot of it was supported by the gardeners at the school, who were also very enthusiastic about the idea because they were able to connect it to things that they would do on the farm. In fact, later they would also get seeds from their village and sow them and tell us that, okay, I got sugarcane this time, I want to see how it does here, or I got millets. And we actually were able to grow many of these things on the farm. So for me, this really became a space of possibilities and open-ended pedagogy. So with this context, I will now invite Samira ma'am to, share with us a little bit of her perspectives regarding the project. I will share the screen again when we require, as she's talking. But basically, Samira ma'am, I wanted to ask you, what was your reaction when you first came to know of this project? Because I had approached the principal and I came to know that you were involved in it. We got introduced later. So what was your reaction?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Uh, so first thing, what came to my mind before I actually met you was that you were on a mission of changing the environment or getting along with children, and so that was very exciting. I have started working in this school since its inception in 2005.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt. I think people are.
Voice is very low, unable to hear you, ma'am.
Okay.
You can.
Is this fine now?
Yeah. Much better.
Okay, this is better. Okay. So I'll repeat a little. I started working in the school in 2005 at its inception. There were only 4 classes at that time till class 4, and we were somewhere else. And when we shifted into this building, and it was growing, and everything about the school was very different. I had worked 8 years in previously in another school, and I found it very motivating. And here everything was, sustainability was a big thing which was introduced to children, and 2-3 years later we had this composting which we used to do in our school. We started that and we showed children and they started the project, and we were doing all these things, making paper envelopes and other things, managing waste, whatever we had in our school. All the canteen scraps used to go to the compost bin. We had a compost in the ground first, and then we changed it to the bucket system. And all this thing was going on, and our PE teacher, who was in charge of this garden initially, she had initiated, and she had built up a nice garden. But one thing was there that she used to use urea and for insecticides for the plants, because first of all, this area which we were placed in was very close to the dumping yard, so it was very difficult for us. There was a lot of pests, so the first thing which occurred to me was, yes, now we can do natural farming, and this was something which was very, something which I wanted to tell children, because anyways, all of us know as adults that we are into too much of poison in our food when we buy food from out, and children get exposed to all this, and followed by all types of diseases and other things. So basically they needed to know what is happening. Even as young adults, they needed to know what is happening, and I was interested, and we were I remember my school management had been so proactive in this. They had sent me and I and one of my colleagues, we both had been to Bangalore to attend a workshop. Literally we had been there, and we saw the process and came back. And after that, you came in. We had visited one school in Dadar, I suppose, with the children, and from there it started. And we really looked forward to what you were going to do, though we were not very sure about what was going to happen. And somehow it turned out to be really, it was worthwhile.
I think the support of the school management was very critical in ensuring that this took off the ground. And it was very helpful that there were already some prior activities happening. So for me also as a facilitator, I think that helps smoothen the process. Additionally, when we were looking for sites, the advantage was that the rooftop already had waterproofing done, and they also had checked it for structural stability and so on. So we did not have any concerns, at least practical concerns, with respect to starting the project. Yeah, that is. Any challenges that you faced when what would you say were at least two things, like one, the challenges that you faced, and also something that you found most satisfying during this period, if you would like to comment?
As a challenge, I felt that children need to get more time with the farm. That is one thing I always felt, because there was a restriction. Many times the gardening classes were taken away by the actual teaching class. So, we missed our gardening sessions, and that was a big challenge for us. And children were so enthusiastic. Secondly, we couldn't accommodate all the children at that particular time. So again, priority was given to a little bit, children who could cope up with their studies, and the others were given extra this attention by their teachers meanwhile. So, like, again, we always felt as gardener teachers, that they are missing out all the fun, and it was very sad for us, though we couldn't help anyways. But however, our principal ma'am and our management were awesome. Anything we wanted were always agreed upon, and always they cooperated in about anything, whatever we required. So we didn't have any issue about it. And we could we conducted trips also to various places to look, to see. Even I think once we had visited a place in Karjat, I suppose, right? With you.
Yes.
So in this way, in this manner, we had a lot of exposure. And initially, I think pest control was one of the bigger challenge, which once the farm started growing, slowly, initially, we had a lot of pests. Then we studied and we looked for ideas. And then we started with these natural pesticides like, the buttermilk, and the very sour buttermilk, and even cow urine. I remember the cow urine, when it came initially, the children were all one hand away from us, and they said, no, this is not what we are going to get into, and it's too much. But later on, when they saw the process of spraying, and the insects slowly disappeared from the plants, and they were very happy about it. And then they all started coming and wanting to spray and all that. So all this was a very enriching experience. And setback, in the sense, I would say that it was more fun than any major setback for per se. Whatever was done was beautiful. And we had a few teachers who had visited our farm, and even schools who had slowly started coming.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I remember that the art because the students sometimes had an art period and they would linger back on the farm. She actually agreed for them to sit back and draw the farm space, which was an interesting way in which they were able to extend their time, given that time was always something that we were it was a huge constraint given within the usual periods that are allotted to different subjects and so on. I mean, following up, on your comment with regards to students, I mean, this was actually an interesting thing, because students they were all kinds of different motivations and reactions when the project began. I mean, some were excited, some were a little scared that, do we have to put our hand in compost, or what do we have to do? Did you see any changes, and what were your overall observations regarding the students over a period of time?
Many of them grew, with us. Like they started developing more interest into it, and they started taking part full-fledgedly. But few of them, of course, did not show interest, but they were there around. So as they found something interesting, they would join in. Again, they would go away and have their own talks and all that. But we did not scold them or didn't say anything about it, because just their presence was enough over there, because this was something very new to them. They were not used to. Right from childhood, we had not trained them in this manner, and they were in 8th grade, so it was too late for them to really get into this mode. So I think it was perfect. And there were many children who were highly spirited, and they were very much interested, and they used to always wait for the class. And usually we used to have in the morning, the before school. So that was the atmosphere was so pleasant at that time. So anybody would like to come on the terrace and just have a look here and there, look at the surroundings, look at the bell. We have a huge bell in our terrace. That was a main attraction, and they used to all enjoy. And after that, the snails started coming in, all the little creatures, the creepy crawly creatures. These were something the city children or urban children are not exposed to. So uh, we were not we were absolutely, like, sometimes we couldn't even answer those questions, whatever and then we had to do some research and all that. So all this happened, and they were very enthusiastic. I remember one of the students, even after passing out, he used to come and he used to help out, from college, he used to come and he used to help out. This was the motivation. So I think children were, more or less, they were very interested, and they missed that.
Yeah. It was, as a researcher also, for me, it was interesting to see that the space allowed for many different kinds of interest to coexist. It was not necessary that everyone, let's say, liked getting their hands dirty immediately, but they were like interested in setting up the supports and the trellises, and or taking care of the saplings, or some were interested in figuring out, okay, how to get rid of the pests. So there were all these different, and some were very aesthetically inclined, so they would be very particular about how the garden was mulched, or where the planters were placed. And yeah, so that was an interesting kind of trajectory for many. And in fact, even like some of the parents, I think, getting involved or coming and visiting the farm during parent teachers meetings and so on. Yeah. So this space, and this is like one of the unintended consequences as far as I'm concerned, because I was working with 8th graders, but because you were you were handling primary school children, how did this space impact your own teaching and what you were doing in the classroom with children? What were some things that you were able to do or think about?
For me, it was total learning. Once again, I had to learn everything, from the beginning, because as a teacher, we think we know everything, but we actually don't know. Practically doing it is something different, other than, I had never done such a thing ever. In my own home, I had grown a few plants, and I had seen my grandma working in a big farm of hers, like a backyard. But that was not enough for me to get all the knowledge about everything happening and how plants work. And there are some plants which grow well together, some don't, and all these things. So many times in English, while teaching maths, or even teaching art, I used to involuntarily get into that conversation and just get children occupied and interested. And I didn't even know that it was, I did not even intend. And I used to totally go out of my plan, that plan which we had, the lesson plan. And we used to keep talking about something which was really different. And children all were like, oh, okay, this happens. Acha, let us go to the farm. Let us have a look. And they used to all start, and then we used to give them incentives, like, okay, you do this, you finish this work, and then we'll have a short visit to the farm. So it was so close by, so it was so interesting for them. And they had their perks, no? So they used to complete their work easily. And then those stories of, and even many times I used to tell them stories about what happened to some of the 8th graders in the gardening class in the morning. So like they were very interested. Oh, are we also going to go to the farm when we'll go to 8th grade? That was the question often asked. And why don't we go just now? Why waste so much time? That was a major question which was often asked. And then I had to tell them.
Yeah, in fact, you had mentioned doing like some small activities where they had collected banana peels and taken to the, farm, or then made seed balls, I think. I mean, there were some, interesting ways in which you had, I think, connected their activities with.
Actually, that was a subject, SUPW, which we have in this, socially, we do some work. So we have this, it is like craft work. So in that we used to do all these seed balls and,
Right.
this propagating new plants and all that. So all this was included in that activity. And
Right.
it is still going on in a very interesting manner, of course, but when it is out of the syllabus, of course, you cannot keep every record of everything going on. And as I told you, it was out of the plan, like main plan. So then we started incorporating it in our plan.
Okay.
Slowly, when we started planning for the forthcoming years, we used to include such things in our plan, and we used to try to incorporate, and other teachers also. Everyone who taught science used to take advantage of the farm, because it is a space which in which so many things can be shown to children, and we are excited.
Right.
I
So
think
at a personal level, how do you feel this space impacted you? Were there any changes that you saw in your own lifestyle, or?
that was among us, because whatever I did there, uh, time limit was always there in school. So any experiment I had to do it at home. I couldn't just wait for the for school. So of course we were doing. I have been composting my kitchen waste since I think more than 13 years, since then I was doing it. And the school farm came in later. So I was already composting, and I didn't know what to do with it, because I didn't have a proper farm in my home. So then I used to carry the sack, in the, I used to fill them in a sack, and I used to carry my compost over there. And many of the crops which came out in that school farm was out of the seeds which I had in my compost. And we didn't know, and the gardener used to say, oh my god, देखो देखो ये क्या उगाया आपके कंपोस्ट से है, ये सब आपके कंपोस्ट से ही हुआ है, हमने तो सीड नहीं डाला. So it was like that. It was so amazing. And children also got exposed to all those things, things coming out of the plants, actually growing. And after that I started doing. My husband was very cooperative. He gave, and in our building is an old building, and we don't have too much of opposition regarding plantation around. Usually it happens that people are not I'm really fortunate about it. So I started with herbs and little bit of things I started growing in my balcony, my grill, and on the terrace. My terrace has a shed, so I was very disappointed because of that. But we had this walls where the sunlight used to usually the position of the sun from east to south, it goes during October. And I learned this during this period. I really actually learned that the sun moves and the plants are also affected. And then we started moving our plants to that direction, because on the top there was shade. So I couldn't do much on the rooftop. So I had to move my plants during October. From October to February, there was a certain position where it was properly lit. So then in that position, it grew better. So all these things I learned so much of, and new plants, new edible things which we normally don't eat, or maybe don't know about. Seasons, importance of seasons in growing these plants. There are so many seeds which I used to sow, and it went waste because it was not in season, it did not support. So all these things happen. It was really a much of a learning in that. And I'll tell you one interesting thing in personal level. What happens is, if I go to the terrace on a holiday morning, my people know that I'm not going to come in. At least I'm not home before an hour or so, because even if I go there for 15 minutes, I'm caught up. So this is one thing, and then it's understood. So I really don't realize when the time goes and every observation and everything. And since we don't use any pest in the farm, so observation is a very important thing in the farm, like every leaf and every.
You mean a pesticide? You're not using pesticides?
Yes.
Yeah. These are from your these pictures.
Samira is muted.
Hello, you're on mute, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, these are the picture of pictures. Of this is one thing which we have one extended open space, which it's a parapet wall actually. So
Right.
on that I have you can see crates. I have those fruit crates which I have lined them with some cloth, and I planted these things, and everything grew quite well. And and right now I can see a lot of butterflies and many birds come in, to eat.
Right.
And there is a total biodiversity in these years, which has developed right now. And right now my curry patta has those caterpillars which I don't remove, so that they get a chance. But normally they don't grow into butterflies because the birds eventually come and eat those worms. So it is like that. Little bit of I have just put pictures of few things which I had kept. Some pictures have gone. I couldn't keep track of them, but there were quite a few tomatoes and leafy greens, so too much.
Right.
And then this is example of one of the seed saving, which is very important in an urban space, where even in school we used to do this. Our gardeners to always keep one vegetable or one fruit, which of this vegetable, a good healthy fruit used to be kept for seed for the next growing season. So this,
Right.
I think I'm going to continue this forever and overwhelmed about it.
Very inspiring, actually, the space that you have been able to create. So I mean, that brings me to like asking you, what do you see as the potential for such spaces in schools? I mean, having done these series of activities with younger children and having seen what we were able to do with 8th graders, if you were, I mean, if teachers were to ask you, okay, how do we create and use such spaces, what would be some things that you can share?
Normally it is seen that terraces are not allowed,
Hmm.
because of the fear of leakage and all that. So ours was waterproof already. So ours, we were lucky in that way. But of course, a little space can always, a school can always cater to a little bit of space where children can begin.
Hmm.
And even around the school premises, there's always open area which is well lit. And I would not say that, rather not all schools maybe, but most of the schools have this space to grow. And waste management is one thing which can be promoted. Like so many things we have as waste which we throw away, and we used to always do this in our school. We used to, even the wooden pots and the cardboards and everything which children had. I have our principal used to collect the waste. We used to ask for waste from homes. So we used to encourage children, come on, get all your similar items, like these type of items which can be used as planters. So if they want to throw away something, they would give away to the school. We used to always have these drives of e-waste collection and all that. With that, we used to have this also, and all the cardboard waste and everything came to school. So this way, it has to be a separate part. It has to be holistic. It has to be like everything. Our waste is my responsibility. If we teach this to children, automatically we have solutions to all problems, and we have to do this with lot of patience, because today's world is going to all this development, and everybody things about development, and we are not aware, or perhaps we are not thinking about the hazards what development is creating, and we can stop it to a certain extent. This is something which we need to ponder about as educators. We need to think, and for ourselves and for our future generation. So I think there is a scope. I am right now getting tagged with Haryali, which is an NGO which works in Mumbai, and they have constructed a lot of space, and they go to schools, and I've approached them, and right now I told them that I'm only interested in training, working with children, not training, working with children with activities, all these. So they are, the person has promised me that he told me that he's going to, they will approach the schools, Haryali approaches, and they initially, when we used to do these activities before you came in, whatever activities on sustainability, the treks we used to go for, Haryali used to take us, and with them we used to do all everything. So right now I'm in that process, and I feel that people will, I'm sure, will take interest. And with experiential learning coming in this NEP, the National Education, we are, I think we are, we have to, many a times, but now it is difficult, as we all know, it is difficult to convince the management and people around. But with the right perspective, I think many things can be done. At least little activities can be done initially, and slowly it takes growth. But of course, passion is necessary. Otherwise, you cannot go ahead with this. It's required.
Right.
Passion.
I think, yeah, partially like the interesting changes and responses that were observed was also because the students were connected with the space in a consistent manner, where they could actually see it evolving with time. I mean, with respect whether they were able to harvest, and that sort of consistency was necessary for them to also develop that kind of sensitivity, and there's a difference between it being just a one-shot activity versus something that can happen in a sustained manner. And for that, I think the kind of time and resources required for the teacher and the school is something that really needs to be thought about. So just to say that we want to have experiential learning, but then the time allocation and the resource allocation for it also needs to be very well decided by the school management, is I think one thing that clearly comes out. So yeah, I think we also have a bunch of interesting questions in chat, and Manav, do we want to open it up to questions and have an open discussion now, or?
Sure. We can, I think Vikrant has a question. I think Vikrant can go ahead.
Since it's a small group, I think one can. Yeah.
I have lots of questions and I have posted a lot of them in the chat.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, I'm the only one who's posted in the chat.
Would you want to speak it out, or would you want me to read it?
Yeah. So you spoke about the timetable and you said that only a part of the class was involved. So how was the timetable adjusted, and people who were not part of the garden class, what were they doing at that point of time?
Okay, I won't say this was the right thing to do in with students' perspective, but these children, the others who were not involved, were a little weak in their subject, in their science and maths, whatever. So they were given extra coaching during that period, and the children who were good at their studies, they were a part of this, and we had it early in the morning, 7 to 8. So it was before school time.
Before school time. Okay.
Yes, it was before school time. So it was always like early in the morning. Before other children came in, we had our class, and once this class started, we didn't have any of these sessions. So it was fixed for once a week, usually. And we used to have Saturdays also. Sometimes we used to have Saturdays, because Saturdays were holidays most of the time. But older children really did not have holidays, so we couldn't do it. But 7 to 8 was our fixed time. So still it is now 9, 10, 10 standard go there. And they get exposure, they learn. They go with their teachers. So this was it. And the children who were not given, those who were in the classroom, used to also, come privately and ask questions and get interested. And we used to take them, and sometimes those who were very much interested and wanted to know. As teachers and facilitators, we used to go and we used to get their curiosity, cater to them. It was a part of it. So secretly also sometimes we used to help them out. So that.
So, in a city like Mumbai, coming before the school bus comes would be a huge challenge, actually.
True. That is true, but there were children who were very much. Of course, there were absentees also. There were children who wouldn't be able to. But we had, we had sports activities in school before school timing. So every morning we had sports activity. They used to come for sports activity. Many children used to come. So they were used to it. So it was not a hassle. Like
okay, so the school itself was functional before school hours.
Right.
Or
so
academic hours. Yeah.
Warm up. Yes. So. And post school hours we did not have, because after 3 o'clock
it's too hot.
It's too hot for children. So otherwise we used to do, but we still did some activities post school also. We did all these little activities, or even something we watched virtually also, we did it during. But actual visit was only in the morning. Morning was the best time. The feel of it was different. No?
You said once a week.
Once a week it was, and even in the Saturdays, at least 2 Saturdays a month.
So the routine taking care of the plant was handled by
gardeners.
By the gardeners.
Yes, gardeners. So in this natural farming, I would also like to share that once we had, anybody must be aware of Dr. Subhash Palekar. We had attended one of his workshops in Navi Mumbai, and our gardener had accompanied. I had asked him whether he would like to attend, and he had agreed. And we had been together to that workshop. It was a 2 days workshop, and he was so interested regarding everything. He even bought 2 books from there. It's in Marathi, so it's easier for him to understand. So I took him along. I took him to another place also, I remember, where, so he was very much instrumental in all these things. So, and even if children used to go to him, and the couple works over there. So they both always answer questions, all the queries.
In fact, that was a very significant thing, because usually, in school, the staff being seen as knowledgeable and being credited with a lot of the work and their own innovations that they would do in terms of thinking about, okay, how should we design this particular trellis, or the support, or what should we add. And the students were very
so from a non-person,
that kind of respect and that kind of yes, absolutely. And they were also felicitated, I think, at different functions. So that was a way in which the kind of knowledge that's not really it's either taken for granted or not given that much importance was something that they were exposed to. So they were like the main co-facilitators of sorts within the school, apart from the teachers.
Excellent value education was given to these children, apart from all the other gardening thing, in terms of the gardener and the relationship they had developed. They have even today, the children who are.
So who was the SME on the project? Were you the SME on the project, or was the gardener the SME, or both?
Yes, we were teachers, of course, teachers are required
Yes.
to explain things to them.
Yeah.
But basically, I think we learn from each other, I would say. I don't say that, no, and everybody does, don't. Yeah,
Yes.
we all have our own limitations. So we
Mhm.
learn from each other. I feel that's my personal opinion. And he is also a very good avid reader. So he reads and finds out
I
things.
think yeah. Yeah. No, I was just saying that, I mean, kind of, unsettling that notion of authority itself was also an interesting thing, because there were these multiple, I mean, you could ask a question and you would not get an answer because nobody knew the answer. And we would be like, okay, let's find out, let's keep observing and figure out what to do.
Yeah.
So, so we also had like people who had set up urban farms in Mumbai, and they were the co-facilitators from outside. So it was really in that sense a kind of, group expertise, and for the teachers to feel comfortable saying that I don't know, and for the students to feel comfortable saying that, okay, I mean, let's find out the answer, and there doesn't have to be one correct answer for this. So that itself, I think, was something interesting. So, and yeah, I mean, your question about the year, this was, we started in 2016, and I mean, I was with them at least till the end of 2017 formally, and then I continued going there informally. And like I had started with 8th graders, and then the school itself took it up where different grades started getting associated with the farm, and it is still a part of the school. So
do those classes still happen, and are the ones who come into grade 8 still taken through this kind of an activity?
Right now, it's with the 9th and 10th for certain reasons.
9th,
it's
okay.
with 9th and 10th.
But it's still an ongoing
Yes,
activity.
yes, very much. Same way as it was, it's still going on. And we see it as a, we see it as a big thing for the future also. I mean, whatever, however it is being done without being a part of the syllabus, actual syllabus.
Yeah.
It's amazing, I think.
So was there any kind of assessment of the students? Did they score marks?
No.
No.
There was nothing.
No assessment.
It was self-learning.
yeah, I mean, because I mean, I was mostly collecting more of these qualitative responses over a period of time, where I would keep interviewing them, at least the batch that I had worked with, to kind of understand their own perspectives if they were changing with time, and what they would, the kind of conversations they would have with their parents or even grandparents, or how they were viewing the space, or any changes in their own actions or activities back at home. So there were a bunch of qualitative shifts that one could observe, but this was not a formally graded activity for them, because we did not actually want it to be like associated with like, okay, if your plant survives, you will get an A grade. So,
It doesn't happen.
So yeah.
Did some of the kids actually start putting up terrace gardens at their homes?
Yes, they did. There were a few students who are still doing, and they used to get. There's a doctor parent couple who they have 2 daughters, and he still keeps posting pictures and of his terrace
garden. Yeah.
It's not terrace farm. He has a dispensary. And on the top of his dispensary, on that terrace, he has done that thing. And every Sunday, the kids are there.
A terrace is a terrace, dispensary or room.
It's like so he has grown a lot of things. And many others have also. There are teachers also who have done, in this.
How would we scale this something like this up to, let's say, to a national level? If we were to, the NEP says experiential learning, and if you were to try and scale this up to, let's say, 1,000 schools.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, a quick thing would be that there are already, I mean, in some sense, like there are these mandates, and even Delhi has rolled out this thing of needing to have like kitchen gardens in schools. So one, I think task is to also be able to make it a make it a part of teacher professional development or pre-service teacher training, because in this case, for instance, there were facilitators who could come from outside, and this being a part of the project, I was associated with the school for a long time. But if we are expecting a school to start these kind of projects on their own, I mean, the question of an in-house expert, so as to say, or someone who's comfortable with this, and there is a lot of interdisciplinary kind of, activity involved. So the issue is that teachers don't have that kind of exposure or orientation before, and for them to, having to start something can be very daunting, and it can also be demotivating if you don't really know what, where,
The teacher does not know, let's be frank.
Yeah. So in that sense, I mean, if this was also made, I mean, there were extensive maybe orientation and workshops where at least on a small scale, if they're able to have these different pilot projects. And I think what, for instance, in now that this school is established, she was approached by some teachers who met her, and so that so then a school can also act as an outreach hub, I think. So there could be a system where in different localities, a few schools with some resources are chosen to become kind of proof of concept for that area, so that you can have a sustained network, and they can also share resources, they can share seeds, they can ask children to go for exchange kind of exposure visits and so on. So that might be one way to scale it up in a graded manner, rather than trying to roll out like, okay, now tomorrow 1,000 schools should have something, because that's not sustainable. I mean, they might be able to start it, and then usually these things fizzle out. So
I hope others ask some questions.
Could you share a bit of your background, maybe? Like your teacher or...
My background?
Vikrant's.
Okay, so I work for the Ministry of Skill Development.
Okay.
And for some time initially was associated with trying to do the vocationalization of education part of it from the Skill Development Ministry. So that's where the question of scale comes up, and would it make sense to get something like the Agriculture Sector Skill Council associated with it, or use their expertise to help scale up?
No, that's a very interesting proposition. In fact, in Chennai, there is this organization called Chennai Resilience Center, where they had worked with these self-help groups to help them set up such kind of residential terrace gardens. But I think if there were like more formal collaborations with the agricultural sector, so you could have like the kind of support that is needed at the ground level, and they are also seen as then co-experts along with teachers. I think that also forms for an interesting kind of collaboration, because you're also looking at employment and allowing school spaces to be more open for recognizing expertise from different areas, rather than putting also a lot of pressure only on the teacher. So
yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. I think we have a couple of educators who are related with the project. We have Aishwarya ma'am and Shubhashri ma'am. Maybe you could share some of your thoughts on implementing this in the schools. I think even Dara could chip in.
Yeah. Good evening. Good evening, sir. Good evening, Deborah ma'am. And good evening, Manav. Actually, as soon as I have seen the subject, sowing of seeds, so it was favorite subject. So waste management is the most important issue nowadays. So as Deborah ma'am has mentioned, my waste, my responsibility. So as per this, we have already done with the separation of waste, that is kitchen waste. So that experiment, it was done in my school, that is Bal Shikshan Mandir, Pune, for 1 year, and it was for grade 6th. So whole year, the group, different groups were made, that is 4 to 5 students. So it was actually here, whatever I have experienced just now, Samira ma'am has told that the actual learning experience, because the urban and rural, that is the difference between that difference has been, I think it has minimized because of the So what they have said that as they have came over there, so it creates main motivation. Suggest a few things, some links over links. Please share that so that we will also get connected with them. If it is not possible at school level, definitely we will try to do at our own level also, because we are engaged now as I think Shubhashri ma'am also there. So because of IISER, we are having a group of teachers also. We can also work together. And nowadays, because of pandemic, online things are there. But yes, definitely to take care of plants, we will have some duties, allotment, and everything. So if you will guide, madam, we can do something. And I have a lot of interest in plants, especially in herbs. I'm actually ex-pharma lecturer. And pharmacognosy was my, I would like to do something in this. Thank you, Manav.
Yeah, happy evening, all. Myself, Shubhashri. So glad to be a part of this meeting, and it's an honor to be here, in fact, to have chosen me. So, very great insights that I got through this uh, webinar or whatever it is. So, like, I'm glad to know that there are so many teachers who really are working hard in the background to build a very powerful nation. So all credits to you, ma'am, and also would also love to be guided under you so that we can also carry such activities. So there are even though there are a lot of limitations at our own end, we would still try to do our best. So wherever our help is needed, please just inform us, and we would also be love to work under you. And also glad to be under part of IISER, because 2 years ago, just before the COVID, us is a huge school in Pune. So I had done this e-waste collection, and also would also in near future would initiate this, because after pandemic a lot of us started using gadgets. So a lot of e-waste could be collected, and they could also be guided to how to dispose them off. So that is one thing. And also what I saw after a few years of working, so even elderly person doesn't know what is wet waste. So wet is what, anything is wet goes under wet waste is what they consider. So the basic knowledge about these things has to be oriented not only to students, or also parents also. I think it's a must. So those things that we still need to throw a light upon, because every day it's a challenge to degrade whatever sorry, segregate the wet waste or the dry waste or the e-waste, whatever it is. So that is one part. And the other part, kitchen garden, I feel that this is the upcoming topic that we need to know. And in due course, all of us know there are a lot of challenges, even with respect to availability of water or even healthy food. So in I don't know, I somewhere read that we would fall short of food in few years, because there's less of land that is available for cultivation. So I think this is the right time for us to gear up and work towards having our own kitchen garden. So thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you for your inputs. Dara, would you like to chip in something, your experience with students?
Thanks so much. It's really inspiring to hear about this initiative, and I just love seeing the pictures of the children up on the terrace, enjoying the fruits of their labors, and it.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're audible. I think
Okay.
there's, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that the whole idea of urban farming, I think, it's really, I think it's a watchword for the future, and I think it's an extremely important and worthwhile activity to get children involved with farming in an urban environment, connecting them with plants and ecosystems, and like Samira ma'am mentioned, experiencing the creepy crawlies and the birds and the butterflies that just seem to appear like magic when there's plants is so exciting, not just for children, but even for adults who get into urban gardening. And yes, I have tried my hand at this in a more rural environment and failed miserably because we had dogs come and dig up all the seeds which we planted, and even goats come and nibble landslides and things, because I was doing this in Missouri, and so some of the kids got very, were very disappointed and disheartened, and that was one of the main reasons why it didn't succeed. But I was lucky enough to have a few colleagues who actually built a unit on organic farming into their environmental science course for ninth grade, which was fairly flexible. The curriculum was fairly flexible anyway. And so they actually came down 3 times a week for 6 weeks while that unit was on, and they actually had to write a paper. They had to choose a research topic and write a paper at the end of it. And that was the main thing that was assessed. And obviously, I mean, if they, the effort they put in on it was an orchard which we had tried to create an outdoor classroom on. And so there was digging and manuring and seed sowing and whatever we could do involved. And so it was more formalized. There was time actually allocated for it. Some of the kids were obviously used that as an excuse to be late for their next class, because they would take extra time strolling back up to the school. It was a bit of a walk. But others were, very conscious of that and would, rush up and rush down and make sure they were on time for their class. But on the whole, I think it was a great experience. And even now, students who have, graduated many years ago still recall the things that they learned, and not just that, but the idea of teamwork, and just being out of the classroom, a change of context, a change of scene, I think made a really big difference to them. And just the idea that education doesn't have to take place within the 4 walls of a classroom, that it can happen in other environments, and that you can actually learn a lot in a different environment. And I think just building that respect for the fact that education doesn't have to happen in a classroom. So thank you so much for your presentation and your enthusiasm, and it's very inspiring.
I think we have one question from Atri. Atri, you can go ahead.
Hello. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. You can hear me?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So while we all seem to be kind of focused on schools, and I mean, basically try to cultivate and imbibe it through developing it as a culture among the school children. Mr. Chawla was talking about scaling it up. So I was thinking if we can think of doing something which and be scaled up organically instead of being a mandate. So if some of the parents can be involved, and to do that, for example, let's say government offices, they have got plenty of spaces available. So some of, for example, let's say if Modi on his Man Ki Baat comes up with an idea and tells government officers to come up with kitchen garden in the empty spaces, then in that case, the parents will get involved. And when anything parents do, and that is something which is going to motivate their children, and that can percolate down to the communities, and that can be easily, that is something which can easily happen organically and at a national level as a movement. So is that something which we can think of? That is what was my suggestion for making it grow organically and scale it up. Because doing it at a school level requires a lot of, as you are saying, there is a constant of time. It is beyond school curriculum. But then if, for example, I as a parent start doing it in the office, then I try to do it at my home. When I start doing it at my home, my child will learn and do it. So, I mean, it's something which comes out of automatic interest. That is it. That is all I had to say.
I think that's a point well taken by everyone here. I think it goes beyond. I mean, it is more in line with the education, kind of education we want, where this science that is taught and the experience that the students get in class are taken much beyond the classroom, right? And not just restricted. I mean, even the conversations we have in a typical social science classroom is just kept in the four walls, and it just ends with the exam. But the discussions that we want them to have outside and the deliberations, they really don't happen. I think Atre raised a very interesting point there. Thank you for.
Yeah.
I would just like to sort of take forward Manav's comment, and I have been wondering whether these terrace gardens can also be used as spaces of assessment, not in terms of whether you grow this plant and if you grow the plant you get an A, but if you are as spaces of practical experience, or like even referring to in question design, when you're saying I take 40 bananas or something like that. Instead of that, using that familiarity with the space that the students are in, and probably use their experience into designing the assessments. So I was wondering whether something like that makes sense. Is it feasible?
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a lot of scope, because I mean, these things were we could already see some of it happening organically, in the sense that when they were, for instance, designing these supports, I mean, there was a lot of, in that sense, geometry involved. I mean, just for them to come up, okay, what would be the best balance? I mean, so they finally came up with a tripod structure which could stand on its own, right? And did not need these additional kind of things, and they figured it out that might be the most stable thing for something to stand. Or just looking at the seasons and figuring out what is the right time to sow something, and what is the duration for a plant. I mean, just this life cycle of a plant. And I mean, across different to design it, the teacher, if they are also a part of it and they are able to see the kind of make note of the observations that children are experiencing or making, I think they can easily be one can customize or the kind of questions or evaluations that come up in the within the syllabus as well. But that again, I mean, requires that much autonomy being given to the teacher in terms of coming up with things that are not maybe very directly related. So like just a small example, when they, I think, had their first harvest of tomatoes, and they were so excited, and they were like, okay, I think one tomato, I mean, it was just a very flippant remark that this to we should sell like for 100 rupees or something like that. It was like some handful of tomatoes. So I asked them, do you know how much tomatoes cost right now? And they said like, not really. And like, okay, I mean, so are you saying that if you went to the market, you would sell these handful of tomatoes for $100? Why don't you go to the market and figure out? And then there were then these conversations on the idea of labor, and like, so the students saying that for 2 hours we are working, and I get tired, and I mean, how can a farmer get so little? So it's like just a thought. I mean, that the idea that there is all these market mechanisms involved, and that could very well be part of a social science chapter in terms of the food miles and the idea of labor, livelihood, and so on. But again, I mean, these are things that I think or require a lot of collaborative thinking between the teachers. So the question of whether that space is made available to them, that extra time is given to them. But yes, I think even as I think researchers, if we were to actually go and help out with creation of these kind of modules, I think teachers would be interested in taking it up. But that initial, I think, iteration and feedback is required. So yeah.
So if I can add, from the perspective that the ministry is thinking or was thinking, for example, when the academic curriculum is talking about germination, okay, and you teach that in 6th or 7th, if they are actually also doing germination activity in the school garden. So that kind of a linkage would add tremendous value. Or when they are studying about the pendulum, going to the playground and looking at the swing and envisioning it as a pendulum. I'm taking an example of this agriculture in terrace garden thing. Or you have those inclined plane, and I remember in my school when we hit inclined plane, I simply lost it. And the friction coefficient, etc. But you look at the slip slide, that's an inclined plane. And all we have to do is drop maybe a concha down it and figure out various things. So linkage of the real world to the academic curriculum. And interestingly, some of the NCERT books actually talk about such experiments, but they never get done.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is to do with the time available and those kind of things. And so the teachers here can actually comment on that better than I can, but that's my impression.
Yeah, so just talk about deloading the curriculum. But then we are digressing into reforms in education, and which is a different ballgame.
One more thing I wanted to add here is that the basic difference between wet waste and dry waste is something which is not understood, like by children easily, even by adults. Like anything which was alive once can go back to the earth, and we can make use of it. That is the concept which we had, like with our children, which we taught them. Like, so like leaves, how can they be wet waste? How can cardboard be wet waste? How can paper be wet waste? So paper is also coming out of something which was live once, although it is treated. But now it can still go back.
Biodegradable, yeah.
Of course, the print medium is not allowed. I mean, it's not favorable. But this, so what I'm talking about is awareness program is necessary. First awareness program, and then we can go ahead in making any constitution or anything, even the syllabus building and all. So I feel that people should work more on awareness building and get each other aware of the basics. These are really basics, which even I came to know eventually when I actually went into the field and I worked with it. Because I've never thought about it previously when I was teaching, and I, in my personal life too, I feel that.
Thank you everyone for joining. I think we had a very diverse and very insightful discussion. Chhavi, do you have any comments before we close?
I think very similar. I think this has been a particularly interesting group where we have had a lot of people from the audience chip in. And I think it also comes from the initial idea that came from Deborah, that she said, I don't want to give a talk. Why don't we right at the beginning make it into a discussion? And I think it just snowballed. So thanks everyone for joining. A lot of friends here also that who I know had joined or they were there. And meeting a lot of new people. So very nice to meet everyone. And yeah, over to you, Manav. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you everyone again for joining and making it a very successful session. We'll have many more sessions like these. Please follow us on our social media for updates. Next would be a talk by Dr. Poonam Batra from the IIHS. She'll be talking on the possibilities and challenges of incorporating sustainability into pedagogies. We will soon send out an announcement email, and also look out for it. If you have any suggestions for topics for more talks like these, please feel free to put it in the chat here, or maybe even catch up on social media. We'll be happy to take it up. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We can stop the recording.